My name is Glenn Schwartzberg with ArganoInterRel, and today I'm going to be talking about what's new in Essbase 21C. Just a little bit about me. I've been doing Essbase since about 1992. So what that really means is that I'm old. I've seen a lot of changes through the years, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the beginning. I'm an Oracle ACE director, which means I go out and I evangelize the products, and more so I get to work with the development team on enhancement and changes to the product. I've actually been working on Essbase Cloud since it was in its alpha version, where it was really bad, to what it is today, which I think is pretty good. So let's go ahead and get started. Have a great number of people in the session. So, of course, we have to have the obligatory ad. I am part of ArganoInterRel, and we are really proud of our awards. We're a 3-time winner of Partner of the Year. We have 3 Oracle ACE directors, an ACE and an ACE alumni, and we're a full-service consulting firm. We do strategy, consulting, staffing, cloud, on-prem, training, all of that good stuff. So I don't want to go into too much. You probably all know about InterRel. I will say that we are now part of a bigger organization. We used to just be InterRel. Now we're part of a larger company of Argano, which is a lot of like-minded companies that came together to be able to give you a better full strategy. So while InterRel is almost 25 years old and concentrates on EPM, we have partners in Argano that do ERP and do CPQ. So we can now join together to offer you anything that you really need in your suite of products. Edward Roski was talking about this in his keynote earlier today. He's very proud of our Net Promoter Score. Basically what this is an independent company went out and talked to our customers to say, how good is InterRel, or ArganoInterRel, I guess. And for global systems integrators, the average is 9. For system integrators, the average is 24%. Really good companies are in the 50s. World-class companies are in the 70s. We made a 77. So, you know, you're thinking, well, 77 sounds like average, but it really is an honor to have it so high. What it really means is our customers really like us, and our customers think that we do a good job. So we're very proud of that. So let's get past all that and talk about why we are here today, and that's to talk about Essbase. And what I'm going to tell you is, originally when I put this presentation together, I was hoping to tell you the latest and greatest things about what just was released. Well, the release of 21.3 has been postponed, and because of NDA requirements, I really can't tell you much about what's going to be coming out in that release. With a safe harbor statement, I can tell you that it's supposed to be coming out fairly soon. The last I heard was this month. Let's talk about the change of Essbase. So in Essbase 3 to 11.1.2.4, which is the latest on-prem version prior to 21C, we consider that to be the Hyperion EPM years. And I started with Essbase 3.1. So again, it just means that I'm old. This was all on-prem. It was considered to be part of the Hyperion acquisition. and subsequently the EPM group of Essbase. So with that, we had a lot of change. In version 5, we had things like dynamic calc introduced, which was a huge thing. System 9, we had it being a platform of all of the products put together instead of just standalone Essbase. In version 11.2.1, we had Smart View as a replacement for the Excel add-in. All sorts of things happened in that Hyperion EPM space. With the advent of Oracle Analytics Cloud, OAC, somewhere around 2017, Essbase was moved out of the EPM group, and it was no longer considered a database. It was actually moved to the analytics group, hence why it was put in with BI, and it was considered to be an analytic engine instead of a database. And when Essbase was first introduced on Oracle Analytics Cloud, it was considered to be customer managed, meaning customers had to do their upgrades and all of that. Well, what happened is clients said, well, we thought that you know, the cloud was supposed to be a SaaS environment and you guys should be taking care of it. So they introduced Oracle Analytics Cloud that was Oracle managed. And so what happened with that is customers no longer controlled their environment. Oracle did it. They did all the upgrades. They did all the control. But with that came a lot more control. Well, Essbase was moved from the analytics group into the database group because Larry and company said, well, you know, we said it's an analytics engine, but it really isn't. It really is a database. It's not a relational database. It's an analytics database, but it is a database. And so with that, we got an upgrade to Essbase 19C, and that was purely cloud-based. And it became, again, customer managed. And the thought behind that was that databases really are customer managed, and it gave users control back to do the upgrades when they wanted to. With OAC, Oracle would do the upgrades whenever they thought it was important. But now, as part of the database group, it was put back to the users to be able to do that. Along came 21C. Interestingly enough, it came in December of 2020, but nobody wanted to call a product 2020 or associate it to that with everything that was happening in 2020. So they created the on-prem version of Essbase as 21C. A couple months later, they also introduced the cloud version in what we call Marketplace to be able to have it either on-prem or in the cloud. And throughout this whole cycle of numbers and changes and name changes, it's been a constant evolution and a constant innovation. So where are we going to go from here? Well, we're really going to go to infinity and beyond. I've talked with Oracle development about some of the things that they're working on, and it is truly an exciting time for Essbase. It's going to places that we never thought it would imagine to go. Now, you know, some people have thought that Essbase is dead. You know, when Oracle bought when Arbor software and Hyperion merged back in 1998, nobody knew how to sell Essbase, so we thought Essbase was dead then. When Oracle bought Hyperion, Oracle had this tool called Oracle OLAP that was a competitor to Essbase, And we thought that they were buying it to get rid of Essbase so they can push Oracle OLAP. You don't hear about Oracle OLAP anymore because Essbase became the strategic product extremely quickly. And so it is moving on and on. It is the basis for a ton of products, including EPM, the planning modules, the financial close module. It is actually a front end to the ERP cloud, what sometimes is called Oracle Fusion. So there's a lot of things that Oracle is being used for, and it is being expanded and expanded to meet those needs. But today we're going to concentrate on Essbase 21C. So let's talk about the different flavors of Essbase. Now, I should have mentioned early on, you are going to be in listen-only mode throughout this. If you do have questions, please post them in the Q&A window, not in the chat window, because I'll see the Q&A better and I'll try and answer them as I go along. The chat window, I'm probably am not going to see till the end. So let's talk about the different flavors of Essbase. I did mention that they created what I said, the on-prem version, and I'm going to change the name of that a little bit. We're going to call it independent, and that's what Oracle is calling it now. And independent really means install anywhere. It's wherever your data center is, whether it's on-prem or whether it's in Amazon Cloud or some other hosted party, even in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, if you're not using the other way to install it. So currently, the independent install is only on Linux. With the 21.3 release, it should be coming out soon on Windows. And I can't give you the exact date, although I have a pretty good idea of when that's going to be. And it uses some pretty simple scripts in order to be able to do the install. The second way that you can get 21C is through Oracle Marketplace, which is installed on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, what I'm going to call OCI from this point on. It uses pre-built Terraform scripts to help ease the installation process and make your life even easier. So let's talk about what the differences are between those two products. So on independent, it uses WebLogic or it uses shared services security in order to enable its security models. Both of those will allow you to do external authentication against your on-prem type of security, whether it be LDAP or Active Directory or some, Okta or some third-party security module. The independent install also has EAS, Essbase Administration Services Lite, in order for you to ease the transition between your current on-prem 11.x implementation and 21C. On Marketplace, the security model is a little bit different. It uses Identity Management Cloud Service, or IDCS, and allows you to, again, still do SSO and federated security back to your on-prem security. You do have to have a SAML2 provider in order to talk to that on-prem security. One of the big differences, though, is that in the Marketplace install, you have the ability to create data data-less cubes using what's called federated partitions. And this is against Oracle's Autonomous Data Warehouse, or ADW. And you can't and you will never, at least they've told me, you will never be able to do that with the independent version. And right now it's only against an autonomous data warehouse. And that's what they're expecting in the future as well. But there are definitely, other than that, the code line between the the independent version and the cloud version, the marketplace version, are the same. You're not going to see any differences in how things react. So two big differences: EAS on independent, dataless cubes, which means that you can have a cube with no data. It would automatically pull data from your database, and so you're getting real-time data. Now, for the people who instead of listening to what I was saying, was actually trying to find the differences, for you here, the differences are the cheek, the seed, the leg, the arm, and an extra little color. So let's talk about the innovation and what the changes are. First of all, and this doesn't matter if you're independent or if you're marketplace, the outline editing has changed over time and has changed from on-prem. So when we started with Oracle Analytics Cloud, it was a pretty rudimentary outline editor. They enhanced it in 19C. They've enhanced it more in 21C, where it's more customizable. It has validations built in. It's definitely a better interaction. So let's actually look a little bit at the outline editor in 21C. And as it comes up, what we're going to see is I actually like this better than EAS, because I get all of the different properties, or some of the properties, being displayed right in front of me, as opposed to having to open up property windows and that type of thing. Now, don't worry, if you don't like the format of this, we can come in here and we can customize it. For example, for some reason, I don't understand why they don't have the alias on it. So I want the alias and I want to move it up to the very top. So if I apply and close this, I now get the aliases showing up here. If I want to move everything around, I can choose which different things that I want to be able to see. Move some stuff out of the way. You'll notice that this is view only, and we'll see why in just a few minutes. But I have the ability, and let me actually open up Sample Basic here, because that one I can edit. And with this one, if I edit it, they've made it so we can set up all of our different properties for the outline, made it very easy to add alias tables, set up dynamic time series, set up our text measures. And if you're using something like OAC BI, we want to name our different generations to make it easier for our users using that product. So with this, I can cut and paste. The one thing that I can't do that people have been asking for and Oracle is working on, but it's really tough thing, is I can't cut and paste between outlines. So I can't open up two different outlines and cut and paste it like I used to in EAS, but I can do almost anything else. And so, for example, right now this is a non-hybrid based cube, but if I wanted to, I can take and with one click turn the hierarchy into a dynamically calced hierarchy. So I could turn this into a hybrid cube very, very quickly. So the outline editor has become a go-to thing. Now, what I will tell you is what I typically do is if I've got a few changes to make, I will make them in the outline editor. If I have more changes to make, I'm going to do it in a different tool. And I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of here and close that and go back to my presentation for a second, if I can find it. So the second way that we can we can edit outlines in 21C is using the Cube Designer utility. And I'm going to show it to you, but I know that Tim Fash later today in his session is going to go into more detail about how to manage dimensions and the like in the Cube Designer. This is an add-in to Excel that you download from your 21C environment, and it makes it easy to take a cube offline and edit it and then reload it. So basically all I have to do here is come and I can export this to Excel, and I'm not going to do data because it takes longer, but it's going to take a minute to do it, and we're going to open it up in Excel. And what you see is, let me turn on editing and make this a little bit larger for you. So what we do is we get the entire cube put into an Excel spreadsheet. So there's the dimensions, here are all of the settings, here are the different generations, and then here are all of the dimensions. And so I can actually come in here to the Cube Designer panel, and I can view the hierarchy to see what it looks like. And I can even go to specific nodes within that hierarchy if I want to change it. So it makes it very easy for me to manage an outline. I can come in here to the designer panel, as it opens up, import the cube into here. And if I wanted to add dimensions, or if I wanted to go into a dimension and add properties to it or do something else, I could easily do so, and even set up how load rules would work with this. And so it makes it very easy. And as I said, Tim is going to expand on this later on. Now, one of the nice things about Cube Designer is I've now just documented my cube. I've got all of the formulas showing up. I've got what the dimensions are. I've got all of the settings. So basically in one click, I was able to create it as a documentation. So it makes my life really easy, because it was never easy to document a cube before. So what's the third way that we can modify, that we can work with our cubes? Well, this is only going to work with independent, and that's EAS Lite. So what EAS Lite is it's supposed to be a short-term solution for you to be able to, once you've migrated your cubes, to be able to manage them in an environment that you're used to. And it really is meant to be short-term, that you should migrate to using the Web UI and Cube Designer. And in order to do this, what you have to do is, once you bring a cube in, actually an application in, you actually have to turn it on to be managed by administration services. When you do, you get a little text next to the cube in the application list that says it's being managed by EAS, and then it's available to be managed in EAS. So if we look here, you'll see that I've got 1, 2, 3 cubes that are managed in EAS right now. And if I wanted to do this, what I would do is I would inspect the cube and I would go to the settings and I would turn this on. Now, a word of warning, if you have it turned on and you turn it off, you can't turn it back on. So if you're going to play with it or something, I would suggest either making a copy of your cube or creating an LCM export that you can restore to. And the reason why when you turn it on, you can't turn it back off is because it makes changes to the outline. The issue with using EAS Lite is that you don't get to take advantage of any of the new features of the outline. So they've made changes to the outline to enhance things like the 2nd generation hybrid engine and sandboxing and data sources and other things. So you'll notice that if I have an EAS enabled cube like this demo basic, if I look at the outline, it's going to be in a view only mode. I can't do any changes here. I have to do them in EAS. And when we go to EAS, you'll notice that the only cubes or the only applications that show up are the ones that I enabled through the web console. And in here, I can do everything that I could do to an outline in the old EAS, the full-blown version of EAS. And I always get the question, well, if it's EAS Lite, what's missing? And currently, right now, you have to have a different EAS for each server. That is being changed. 21.3 is supposed to have the ability to connect to multiple servers, but there's other things that you can't do in here. So for example, you'll notice that if I right mouse click, I don't have the ability to view the logs or to do a lot of other things. And so the logs are in a new format in 21C or in the cloud, or actually in 21C, I should say. So you can't edit the logs here. You have to go to the web UI. In addition, if you've set up something called data sources, which I'll talk about in a little bit, you can't edit those. You can't maintain them here. And if you build a load rule here, it is going to be the old style load rule. So there are definitely limitations of using EAS. The one advantage to it is that you can edit, you can open up 2 outlines and you can cut and paste between them. That's really the only advantage of EAS Lite. So I talked about, you can't use the new kind of load rule, but what does that mean? So let's talk about that next, if I can get this to forward. So let's talk about dimensions and data load rules and what the changes are in them. So again, load rules have been a progression from OAC to 21C. And in 21C, they enhanced load rules tremendously. So if we come here to scripts and to rules, what you're going to see is, and This new type of rule was actually introduced in OAC Essbase, but I actually find it pretty good. And that's this index-based dimension build rule. So if we open this up, the first thing that you're going to see is if you're using OAC or 19C, this particular screen has been enhanced a lot. The first thing is now I can select the different types of data sources and actually pull data in by those different data sources. So if I'm going with a file here, I can look for a file. Let's take a look at the market dimension, and I can preview the data on this. I always mess this up. I have to give it a name. And I can preview the data to see, well, is this coming out the way I expected? And maybe I need to change my delimiter or something. I might change the lines to skip, those type of things in order to bring the data set in right. I might want to change it and use a SQL call or something else. And this has been enhanced, and this is so much nicer than it was in OAC. When I go ahead and I proceed, it's going to go ahead and bring up my dimension editor. And one of the things that I love here is that I don't have to go to other screens to do a lot of my work. So here I said this is the market dimension. It filled it in all the way. I come in here and I say, okay, this is a parent. This is a child. Who knows what that is? This is maybe a UDA. And you'll notice also that if I say alias, I can tell it what alias table it is. So what I can do here is, instead of having one alias table and like the old load rules, I can have multiple aliases all at once. This is one thing that you get in index-based rules. The other thing that I get in here is something that makes my life so much easier. Say that I wanted to create a column that joins field 1 and field 4 here. So I can come in here and I can say I want to create a column with an expression, and this is case sensitive. So maybe I want to join column 0 and put in a dash and then adding column 3. If I validate this or preview it, oh, I needed a comma here. Much better. So I've just created this column. In the old style of load rules, I couldn't do this very easily. I would have to move, copy columns and move them around and do things like that. And you'll notice that even when I did this, I can even use substrings in here as well. And the nice thing here also with the data sources is that if I come here to my SQL properties, I can actually change what my SQL is. So I'm going to just say it's a data source, and preview the data here. Now, what I did find is that it doesn't preview the data. You actually have to close the rule and reopen it. It is kind of a bug, but such is life. And in 21, oh, it actually did it here. I'm amazed. But in the new version, this actually has been changed as well. So there's a lot of things that you can do with the new index-based rules. Data loads they've enhanced as well. So now again, if I select my data source and I can preview this once I have that. So this one's reading from my ADW, proceed. And what's nice here, again, is because I had the dimensions the same name, it actually filled them in. And if I wanted to do some editing here, like in this one, it knew that it was a number and it was a data field. So it allowed me to do it. I can actually change the storage type. So if I have multiple rows, I could sum them together, do other things. What's nice is it gives me preview of what the column looked like, and it gives me my dimension editor. So if I wanted to fill these things in, I could. So they really have made some pretty good improvements to the load rules. So let's go back to the presentation for a second. And let's see what else we have. So we have other enhancements as well that have come through. When we went to the cloud, we went from a C++ based engine to a Java based engine. They cleaned up a lot of the bloat in the code and made it more efficient, so it works better. In 21C, we have what we call the Generation 2 hybrid engine. They made the hybrid engine better. It was good in 19C. They made it better in 21C. That can handle more complex outlines and do it faster, more efficiently. For calculations, they've made a whole bunch of improvements. And so if we come back here to our scripts, within the calculation script editor, we can now actually execute a calc script either interactively or run it in background as a job. The validate is here. They've added in all of the functions, either categorical. I know the functions pretty well, so I prefer the alphabetical list, where I might just go straight to what it is I'm looking for. And if we bring in one, it gives us the parameters of what the calculation is looking for. So calculations have gotten better. This may sound like a minor thing, but one of the things that they've done in the jobs is we can now select multiple files in order to do a load. So if I have multiple text files, for example, I can use them. And in 21C, we can also use CSV files, which we couldn't do in 19C. So I can select multiple files, multiple rules from, and do it as a data load, that type of thing. So they've made our life even more better. In calculations, starting with the cloud, with OAC Essbase, they added in runtime substitution variables, just like planning has. So we can pass parameters into a calc script from Excel. And so the users can run calculations based on a particular scenario or a particular product or anything else. It makes things a lot easier. I use it at one client. They have a pseudo planning application. And so to move data from one scenario to another, we enable certain calculations that they can do in order to do those kind of moves and to do some allocations and do some other things. But they pick what scenario it's on and they pick what version it's on, that type of thing. And then finally, they've made all sorts of enhancements to sources. Sources is a new construct in the cloud, and it's now available in 21C on-prem as well. And what this does is it generalizes things like your connections. So in this case, this one is connecting to a SQL Server database. I have one that's connecting to an ADW, all sorts of things, in order to be able to have a connection that's available for doing drill through. We need drill through now because Studio has been deprecated, but I can also use it for other things like data loads and dimension build rules. I don't have to use a file for it. I can use a data source, or I can use SQL. With my data sources, I create a data source that is basically a SQL statement, but it's based on the type of connection. And one of the things that is coming out in 21.3, don't tell anyone I told you this, is the ability to use substitution variables in data sources. Now, I could be saying this in a fever dream, so you don't have to believe me. Wait till 21.3 comes out, but you will be able to do it. If you want to know a lot more about data sources, I think that Tim is going to talk about them later today, but you can also go back to my Kscope session from this last summer, where I talked about nothing but drill through for an hour. So with that, let's go back to the slide deck for 1 second. There is a ton of things that has happened with 21C, and it's just getting better and better. Not the next version, but the version after it is supposed to have huge enhancements to that federated partition, creating dataless cubes. They're looking at adding a whole bunch of enhancements that users have recommended. And that's one of the things, is don't be shy about making recommendations for improvements to the product. They actually listen to you pretty well. Open up an SR to do it, or email me and I will let them know what your feelings are and what the community has. I talk to Oracle development all the time, and they're actually including about 5 of my enhancements into the next release, or so they say they're going to. We'll see if they actually make it in. So with that, I wish I could tell you more about what's coming on in 21.3, but I did sign some NDAs. So we have just a couple of minutes. If you have any questions about 21C, please put them into the Q&A window, and I will be happy to answer them. If not, thank you for joining me today, and hopefully you learned a little bit, and have a great rest of the conference. I don't see any questions coming in. If you do have a question in the future about anything, you can email me at gschwartzberg@interrel.com, or if that's too hard for you, info@interrel.com. And I don't see any questions that have come in. Oh, there's somebody in the chat. Well, thank you, Kurt. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody, and my time is just about up. So have a great conference, guys.